Hello, friends. Now we are embarking on a journey of the singly reinforced beams. We are looking at the chapter 2 in the subject of design of structures 1, the singly reinforced beam. So, before I come to what is a singly reinforced beam, let me just take a brief look at what is a framed structure. A framed structure is a monolithic frame. It is a monolithic frame comprising of footings, columns, beams. It may have the structural support of the walls and then finally the slabs. Now what happens over here is that the load from the floors or the slabs come over the beams. The beams, the secondary beams are supported by the primary beams. So the load from one beam can be going on another beam. So beams can be supported on the main beams, also known as girders. The girders or the beams take the loads from the slabs. They also have the self weight and they have the wall loads coming on them. They give the reactions to the columns. The columns take all these load together and transfer to the foundation. So that's the support system which we have. So the foundations transfer the load to the soil below. The foundations take the load from the column, or they support the columns. The columns in turn supports the beams. The beams supports the slabs and the walls and the floors, as the case may be. Now when we look at the slabs or floors are primarily subjected to flexure. They are primarily subjected to bending. They undergo bending. Okay, bending is flexure. This bending is due to the loads coming over them along with their self weight. Now what are the different loads which can be coming on the slabs? The loads which can be coming over the slabs could be its own self weight, that is a dead load. It can be the people moving around, which is the live load or the imposed load. Maybe some cupboards placed over the slab, maybe the furniture. So all these become the imposed loads and the likewise. So all these loads coming over the slabs create bending in the slabs. So the slabs can be bending uh, in one direction, or they can be bending to form sort of a cup shape. So we can imagine the slabs bending. So slabs are primarily subjected to flexion. Similarly, the beams too are also subjected to flexion. Now beams take the load from the slabs, walls and their own self weight, and they also bend. Now this bending causes bending moment in the beams. Now the term girder is used to define a main beam, a large beam, a heavy beam which generally supports the other beams. These girders are normally large span beams, huge section beams, so they are known as girders, or some people also call them as primary beams, and the other beams are termed upon as secondary beams. So we have two types of beams, the uh, girder and the beams. Now if you see over here, these horizontal beams over here in the picture take the load from the slab. There is a load coming on the slab. The whole slab is there over here. This load gets transferred on these beams. So these are the beams, and from here the load gets transferred on these beams. So load from the smaller beams get transferred on the larger beams. These larger beams are known as girders. The larger beams are known as girders. Many a times the larger beams are not there. Directly the beams take the support of the columns. In that case they are just known as beams. Now the larger beams over here, the girders, give the reaction to the column. Each column takes the reaction from here, and the column is designed for this load. Normally this reaction which is coming from the beam, normally this reaction is axial. It is expected to be axial at its axis, at the column axis. But many a times this reaction does not come at the axis. It is at a distance away from the axis, in that case eccentricity is created. Now as a result of the eccentricity, there is flexure or bending also created in the columns. So the columns also can have bending in them. Now why and when does the load directly not go in the axis? One of the reasons could be the improper casting of the columns. If the casting of the columns is not proper, then the centroid of the section can be shifted. If the centroid is shifted, then there could be eccentricity created, because the reaction would be at one point and the centroid would be at another. So there could be various reasons why this is happening. That was one of the reasons. We will be discussing these reasons separately later. Now from here, from the columns, when the load gets transferred to the footings, we find that the load gets transferred to the footings, but then from down over here there would be an upward pressure acting on the footing. Now this upward pressure which is acting on the footing will also create flexure in the footings. So we find that there is flexure in the slabs, maybe in this direction, in this direction. There is flexure in the beams, so the beams can be bending in this direction, or it can be bending in this direction over here. There is this column which is supposed to take the load axially. It is supposed to take axial load, but because of eccentricity there may be bending created in the column, and then finally the load goes in the foundation. It is also expected to be axial, but then since the load is transferred in the soil will try to resist it and give a upward reaction over here. Now that upward reaction will be creating flexural uh, or bending stresses, or flexure or bending in the foundation. So that is what we observe, that primarily all the members, all the structural members are subjected to flexure. Now coming to the the beams over here, what we find is that the loads coming on the beams give rise to bending moment, shears, and sometimes torsion too. We have studied in the subject of materials and structures earlier that a beam has been given to us. It is subject to UDL or point loads, whatever types of loads, and from that we have drawn the shear force diagram and we have drawn the bending moment diagram. What is this shear force diagram? What is this bending moment diagram? It is nothing but at a particular point in the beam, how much shear force is acting. At a particular point in the beam, how much is the magnitude of the bending moment. For example, in a simply supported beam with a UDL, we know that at the midspan, at the midpoint, the bending moment is maximum. We know that the bending moment is given by WL squared by 8 as a general case. For a simply supported beam fully loaded with a UDL, at the midspan is the maximum bending moment, and that is equal to WL squared by 8. So the bending moment diagram tells us that at this point the bending moment is of this much magnitude. So bending moment diagram, the prevailing bending moment diagram for a beam tells us how much is the magnitude of bending moment. So it only tells us that at all the points how much magnitude of bending moment exists. So whenever there is a beam, whenever it is loaded, we know that bending moment occurs on the beam. Similarly, at any point in the beam, there is shear force also represented by the shear force diagram. So at that particular point, if I draw a vertical line on the shear force diagram, I know how much is the magnitude of shear force acting in the beam. So a beam is subjected to bending moment as well as shear force. Sometimes the beam may be subjected to torsion also. Now what is torsion? Torsion can be simply understood to be something like twisting. It tries to get twisted. Now in bending, it is trying to bend. In shear, it is trying to get cut, like taking a scissor and whatever we are cutting, it is also action of shear. So that action occurs on the beam, and sometimes it undergoes twisting. Now this twisting of the beam is termed upon as torsion. Now when the reinforcement is provided only in the tension zone of the beam, it is called as singly reinforced beam. That means a beam, whichever. Now over here in the sketch we see that there is a cantilever projection over here, cantilever beam over here. Now cantilever beam, as we know, it has tension on the top, it has tension on the top. Now if the bars on the top, if these bars on the top in the lengthwise direction are taking the bending moment, only these bars on the top are taking the bending moment, not the bottom bars. These bars are not supposed to take the bending moment, but only these bars. Then this particular beam would be a singly reinforced beam. Similarly, suppose this is my simple support beam, a beam with a simple support. Then over here, then we know that the bending moment would create tension at the bottom. Bending moment would create tension at the bottom, and so if only the bottom steel is provided to take care of that tension, and there is no tension at the top, and no steel takes that tension or compression over here, steel is not required to be provided over here. Steel is required to be provided only in one direction, only at the bottom, only in the tension. Then it is a singly reinforced beam. See over here, in this case, if it is required only over here, not down, for taking the loads, then this particular beam would be a singly reinforced beam, that is a cantilever beam. In case of simple support beam, tension is down, so if it is required to be provided only down and not on top as shown over here, in that case it would be a singly reinforced beam. Sometimes reinforcement is required to be provided in tension as well as compression zone, because the loads are heavy, because the bending moments are heavy, the concrete itself is not capable of taking the load, or there may be more reasons other than that. When reinforcement is provided in the tension zone as well as compression zone, in both the zones, this is the tension zone over here for the cantilever on the top, and this is the compression zone for the cantilever at the bottom. So whenever we are providing the steel on the top as well as at the bottom, it is a doubly reinforced beam. Similarly over here we find that there is steel provided on the top as well as the bottom. As we see over here, steel is provided as circular dots over here at the top as well as bottom. This is a doubly reinforced beam. So we have two types of beams. We have a singly reinforced beam and a doubly reinforced beam. We have another type of beam. Look at this. Now we know that this is a slab in between a beam and there is a beam. This is a slab with a projection this side, with a projection this side. Many a times this part of the slab, acts along with the beam. If this part of the slab, if the portion of the slab is cast integrally with the beam, and it acts together to resist the bending moment, to resist whatever bending moment will be coming on this, then this particular beam, look at the shape of this particular beam will be known as a T-beam. The earlier types of beams had cross sections of as a rectangle. Now in this case the cross section is a T, so this particular beam is known as a T-beam. It acts together, the slab and the beam acts together, they act integrally, they act to take the bending moment whatever is coming on this together. Now this is a T-beam. It is also known as flanged beam, because this is a flange at the top, this is a flange over here, so it is called as a flange beam. If you observe at the edge of the room, at the on one side of the room, this T will not have one flange, it will be only like this, so it is of the shape of an inverted L. So in that case, that particular beam which would be coming at the corner, at the edge over here, would be a L beam. So flange beams can be T beams or they can be L beams, but they act together with the slab. Slab and the rectangular portion comprise the beam. Let me tell you, the capacity of this beam is much more than the rectangular beam. The capacity of a flanged beam, that is a T-beam or a L-beam, is much more than a rectangular beam. So this is a rectangular beam, depending upon whether the flange covers the beam on either sides or only on one side. it will be known as a T beam or a L beam.